Will, after 15 years boosting our market share, your role's eliminated. Rob Miller, my boss, said flatly, his gaze fixed somewhere over my left shoulder. Jessica Chen, the sleek new consultant he'd brought in, sat beside him, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Desk cleared by 5. My chest tightened. I nodded once. Understood. Walked out. No scene. Back at my desk, the familiar hum of the marketing floor felt distant. I initiated a final data sync to my personal cloud, a precaution I'd started months ago. Packed my world's best dad mug, a photo of my daughter, Sarah. 15 years of my life. Gone in a breath. They wanted me out fast. They had no idea how ready I actually was. The shift had begun 6 months prior with Jessica's arrival, all sharp suits and sharper talk of growth hacking that often dismissed our proven brand loyalty programs. 3 months later, I found myself mysteriously double-booked and missing from the planning sessions for the annual go-to-market strategy. Then, about a month ago, my admin access to the company's CRM's customer relationship management system vanished. Just streamlining. Will, Rob had offered with a tight smile. By then, I was already meticulously archiving key campaign data and vital customer engagement reports onto an encrypted drive. I also kept a log of Rob's increasingly erratic directives, heavily influenced by Jessica. The real alarm bell. Finding a discarded new department org chart in the recycle bin last week. My role wasn't just changed, it was completely gone. That confirmed everything. I joined Connect Plus when we were just a handful of people in a cramped office, the air thick with the smell of old printers and fresh ambition. I practically built our marketing department from the ground up. Remember my Community Connect initiative. That campaign single-handedly put us on the map in the early 2000s, doubling our subscriber base inside a year. The ROI's return on investment on that was stuff of company legend. I personally onboarded and mentored many, including Susan Davis, now one of our top marketing specialists. We celebrated every product launch, every hard-won market share point like it was the Super Bowl. I poured everything into this place, believing loyalty was a currency that mattered. Connect Plus, in its early days, valued genuine customer connection and sustainable growth. The old leadership got that. Rob, with his fresh MBA and a vocabulary stuffed with the latest corporate buzzwords, was a different breed. He, and particularly Jessica, seemed to chase flashy short-term metrics, often pushing for aggressive data acquisition tactics that I felt bordered on unethical and risked our hard-earned customer trust.
We need to be agile, Will. Disrupt or be disrupted?
He'd chirp in meetings, completely missing the foundation of our success. I'd argue for integrating new tools thoughtfully, for not abandoning the core values that made us trusted. He just saw me as a dinosaur, resistant to the new age. The chasm between us widened steadily. First, it was the constant closed-door strategy sessions between Rob and Jessica, their hushed tones abruptly ceasing if I walked by. Then, my carefully planned budgets for proven traditional media campaigns were systematically gutted, funds rerouted to Jessica's untested digital experiments. Key client relationships I'd cultivated for over a decade were suddenly reassigned to junior staff under her. New model. Why need fresh perspectives? Will, Rob announced in one team meeting, his eyes flicking towards me for a brief, dismissive moment. Invitations to crucial planning discussions simply stopped arriving. Susan Davis, bless her, once quietly mentioned overhearing Rob and Jessica discussing optimizing team structure for digital-first imperatives. The absolute turning point, though, was that discarded org chart. My name, my entire division as I knew it, wiped clean. Jessica Chen was listed as Head of Digital Strategy and Innovation. That's when my quiet observation shifted into focused, silent preparation. The hum of my home office was a stark contrast to ConnectPlus's constant buzz. No urgent calls, no looming deadlines. Just me, my personal laptop, and the encrypted drive I'd diligently backed up for months. My wife, Laura, had left a coffee by my side. She knew. 15 years of marriage teaches you things. After she headed out for groceries, I plugged in the drive. It wasn't just campaign stats, it was budget drafts, approval chains, vendor emails, stuff I'd seeded myself on or saved from shared project folders over the years, especially since Rob and Jessica started their streamlining. There it was. A series of payments to a new agency, Vertex Marketing Solutions, almost a 900,000 over the last 10 months. The approval signature, Rob Miller, countersigned by Michael Thompson, our CFO. I cross-referenced the dates with our major Q3 and Q4 campaigns. Vertex was supposedly handling next-gen digital outreach, but their listed deliverables were vague, and I couldn't find any tangible impact in our analytics. The ROIs, return on investment, figures Rob presented for these initiatives suddenly looked suspicious, possibly examples of ROI inflation. I pulled up Vertex's business registration, a P.O. box address, the listed principal, Christopher Bell. A quick, discreet search on a professional networking site, Christopher Bell, son-in-law of Michael Thompson. My stomach clenched. It wasn't just incompetence or a push for new methods. This was something else. The shock quickly cooled into a hard, focused resolve. They hadn't just made my role redundant. They needed me gone, because I was the one who might spot these campaign budget discrepancies. The old Will, the loyal company man, was gone. A new Will was emerging, one ready to fight. My first move: figure out how deep this went and who else knew. I sat in my car, a block away from ConnectPlus headquarters the next morning, a burner phone in hand. My old laptop was connected to a public Wi-Fi hotspot. Using an anonymous email service, I drafted a message. Simple. To the point. Sent it directly to Rob Miller. Subject: Query Vertex Marketing Invoices. The body was brief. Rob, reviewing some past budget items from my files. Could you clarify the specific performance metrics and deliverables achieved by Vertex Marketing for the Q3 to Q4 spend? Trying to reconcile some figures. Thanks, Will. No accusations. Just a simple query. If he was innocent, he'd provide data. If he was guilty, he'd react. It didn't take long. Less than 30 minutes later, my burner phone buzzed. Rob's personal cell. I let it go to voicemail. His message was clipped, a little too forceful. Will, got your email. Bit unusual, mate. Everything's above board. Call me. I didn't call back. An hour later, an email landed in my personal inbox, the one they knew, from Jessica Chen. Subject: confidentiality obligations. It was a stern reminder of a standard separation agreement, one I hadn't signed yet, and its clauses about non-disclosure and non-disparagement. Any attempts to access or disseminate proprietary company information could result in legal action, it warned. So, threats first. Standard playbook. Later that afternoon, another call from Rob. This time, his tone was different. Softer. Will, look, maybe we can talk about your future. There might be a consulting opportunity, something remote. Generous package. Let's just put any misunderstandings behind us. The shift from threat to bribe was almost comical. No thanks, Rob, I thought, deleting his voicemail. I'm not looking for hush money. They were nervous. Good. The initial panic from Rob and Jessica told me I'd hit a nerve. But I needed more than just Vertex. That evening, I dove back into the archives on my encrypted drive, specifically focusing on vendor contracts and budget approvals from the 2 years since Michael Thompson became CFO. If Vertex was a pattern, there might be others. I started looking for similar red flags, newly established companies, vague statements of work, the sexadal archive, and rapid, high-value approvals by Rob Rubber stamped by Thompson. And there it was, Summit Strategic Group. Another $1.2 million over 18 months. Different name, same payments for premium brand positioning services. Summit's business registration led to a Linda M. Thompson. A quick cross-check. Michael Thompson's wife. This wasn't just a one-off with the son-in-law. It was a family affair, a network of shell corporations designed to siphon funds. The scale of it was larger than I'd imagined. It became chillingly clear. Rob Miller wasn't just a pawn. He was a willing participant, likely getting kickbacks, or at least significant budget autonomy, in exchange for his cooperation. His frantic push for these innovative but opaque vendors, his sidelining of my more traditional, transparent campaigns, it all made sense. Jessica Chen's role also crystallized. She wasn't just a growth hacker. She was the enforcer. The one brought in to dismantle the old guard, specifically anyone like me who understood the historical data and might question the new, inflated expenditures. Her talk of disruption was a smokescreen for systematic looting. The company I'd helped build was being bled dry from the inside by the very people entrusted to lead it. This went far beyond my own dismissal. My resolve hardened. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposing the truth. Over the next 2 days, I worked methodically, like piecing together a complex marketing campaign, but this one was about deconstruction. I collated everything. Copies of the suspicious invoices from Vertex Marketing and Summit Strategic Group. Their business registration details clearly showing the conflict of interest with Michael Thompson's family. Screenshots of their non-existent online footprints and a timeline of payments cross-referenced with Rob Miller's project approvals. I created spreadsheets detailing the flow of money, highlighting how these payments lacked corresponding, verifiable deliverables or ROI. The total was staggering, over $2.1 million siphoned off. It was a detailed, damning dossier. My personal vendetta had evolved. This was about corporate malfeasance on a significant scale. I couldn't just send this out anonymously. It would be dismissed. I needed an internal champion, someone with integrity and clout. I thought about Susan Davis, but this was too big for her to handle. It would put her at risk. Then I remembered David Green, a board member I'd interacted with a few times years ago on a major brand repositioning project. He was old school, sharp, and known for asking tough questions during financial reviews. He was still on the board, semi-retired but influential. Finding his contact information took some digging through old archived company newsletters on my backup. But I found a personal email address he once used for an alumni association we were both peripherally involved with. I took a breath and composed a short, direct email. Mr. Green, this is Will Taylor, formerly of Connect Plus Marketing. I have some urgent information regarding serious financial irregularities at the company that I believe the board needs to be aware of. Could I request a brief, confidential meeting at your earliest convenience? I hit send, my heart pounding a little faster. This was the point of no return. David Green replied within a few hours. Will, good to hear from you. Though sorry to hear it's formerly. Your work on the Evergreen campaign was memorable. I can meet tomorrow morning. Send me a time and a quiet place. His quick no-nonsense reply was reassuring. We met at a small, independent coffee shop miles from the Connect Plus office. I laid out a concise summary of my findings, then handed him a flash drive containing the full report, spreadsheets, and supporting documents. He listened intently, his expression growing more serious as I spoke. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he slowly tapped the flash drive on the table. This is quite a set of allegations, Will. The documentation seems thorough. He looked me straight in the eye. Rob Miller and Michael Thompson have been pushing for some unusually structured vendor contracts lately. There was some debate at the last Finance Committee review. Your information might explain a few things. He paused. I'll need to verify this independently, of course. But if even half of this is accurate, there will be serious repercussions. He told me an emergency board meeting was already being whispered about for later in the week, unrelated, or so he thought, to review some budgetary overruns. Your timing, he said with a slight, grim smile, might be impeccable. As I left the coffee shop, a sense of guarded optimism settled in. Justice might actually be possible. That evening, my personal cell rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Will, it's Jessica Chen. Her voice was strained, all the earlier arrogance gone. Rob and Mr. Thompson would really like to discuss your transition. They feel there's been a misunderstanding. They're prepared to be very generous to rectify it. The panic was palpable. They knew something was up. My silence was clearly unnerving them more than any threat I could have made. That night, I didn't sleep much. I used a secure, encrypted email account I'd set up months ago, a just-in-case measure. The recipient list, every single Connect Plus board member. The subject line was stark, ORG. Evidence of significant financial misconduct requiring immediate board review. David Green got a separate heads-up text from my burner phone. Package delivered. Showtime 8 a.m. Attached was the full dossier, everything I'd shown him, meticulously organized, plus a cover letter detailing the $2.1 million minimum I'd concretely traced to Michael Thompson's family via Rob Miller's approvals. My finger hovered over the send button for a moment, then pressed down. Done. No turning back. Friday morning broke cool and clear. I sat on our porch, coffee in hand, watching the kids on our street head off to school. Laura gave my shoulder a squeeze before she left for work. No frantic commute for me, just waiting. At precisely 8:00 a.m., my email landed in their inboxes. By 8:23 a.m., my burner phone, the one David knew, started buzzing. Unknown numbers, probably assistants to board members. I let them all go to voicemail. David had told me an emergency finance committee review was already on the books. My intel would detonate right in the middle of it. He'd be there, my report in his hands, watching the fallout. At 9:47 a.m., a text from an unknown number, which I later learned was the interim head of HR. Connect Plus legal counsel requests your immediate presence to discuss confidential matters. A beat later, David Green called my personal cell. Will, it's begun, he said, his voice low and steady. Your email is the only topic of conversation. They're stunned, shocked, scrambling. I could hear the controlled chaos in his hushed tones. The company's external counsel is being looped in. They want to talk to you. Urgently. I'm available by phone. David, I said. They're insisting on in person. No, I stated calmly. Everything I have is in that report, and everything in that report is backed up in multiple secure, off-site locations. If anything happens to me or my family, further copies automatically go to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 major news outlets. My cooperation for now is that document. A pause on his end. Understood, Will. I'll relay that. Stay put. Stay safe. By noon, the first whispers hit the local business news sites. Connect Plus leadership under scrutiny amid financial irregularity claims. No names yet, but they would come. They always do. The silence from Rob Miller and Jessica Chen was deafening. Michael Thompson was probably trying to shred his entire office. Later that afternoon, David called again. It's a mess, Will, but a necessary one, he said, sounding tired but resolute. The board has authorized a full forensic audit. Miller and Thompson have been placed on immediate administrative leave. Their access is revoked. Security is escorting them out as we speak. Jessica Chen is also on leave, her consultant contract suspended pending review. She's apparently claiming she knew nothing, just executed directives. The initial review of your data suggests the 2.1 million is solid, likely just the start. They're already seeing patterns that suggest it could be double that, maybe more, once the auditors dig in. Justice. It wasn't loud or explosive, but a quiet, grinding certainty. The system I'd set in motion was working. They acted. They listened. They saw. The board also wants to talk to you, Will. David continued, a shift in his tone. Not just as a whistleblower. They're impressed, to say the least. They're discussing creating a new senior role. Something around ethics, compliance, ensuring this never happens again. They want to know if you'd consider coming back to spearhead it. Reporting directly to the board. I was surprised, genuinely. I'd anticipated they might want my help with the investigation, but not this. I need to think about that, David. I managed. That evening, I laid it all out for Laura. She listened, as always, her gaze unwavering. When I finished, she simply asked, "What does Will Taylor want to do?" The question hung in the air. The part of me that wanted to see Miller and Thompson face the music was satisfied. They were out. Their careers, likely their freedom, in tatters, but connect-plus. The place that had unceremoniously dumped me after 15 years. It's a lot to take in, I said. I need some time. The next morning, I drove out to a state park, hiked for a couple of hours, cleared my head. The anger was gone, replaced by a sort of calm. When I got back, I called David. If the board is serious, I said, I have conditions. Non-negotiable. The following Monday, I wasn't in a visitor's chair. I was in the main boardroom. David Green sat at the head of the table, flanked by the acting CEO and the lead external counsel. Will, David began. The board has passed a formal board resolution. We want to offer you the newly created position of Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to this board. The initial findings from the auditors are extensive. The damages exceed 4.5 million. Your diligence was critical. I slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. My conditions, I said. The acting CEO picked it up. Her eyebrows shot up. Full autonomy and budget for the compliance department. Authority to overhaul and approve all vendor contracts and major marketing expenditures. Direct oversight of internal audit functions related to ethical conduct, and a commitment to fostering genuine corporate governance, not just lip service, silence. This is comprehensive, Will, she said. So was the fraud, I replied, my voice even. It happened because the checks and balances failed, because loyalty was exploited and oversight was a joke. That ends now? I stood up. You have until end of day. I understand if it's too much. David Green caught my eye and gave a minute nod. They called at 4:52 p.m. Every condition accepted. 6 months later, I was in my new office. It wasn't flashy, but it had a view and authority. My first major task had been working with the auditors and legal to claw back what we could and to implement a new, stringent vendor due diligence protocol. We also launched a company-wide ethics training program mandatory for everyone, starting with the executive team. Rob Miller had pleaded guilty, taking a deal to testify against Michael Thompson. Thompson was fighting, claiming he was duped, but the evidence trail was damning. Jessica Chen, after a lengthy interview, where she apparently spilled everything she knew to save her own skin, had her contract permanently terminated and was facing potential civil actions from the company. We'd recovered nearly 70% of the stolen funds. The company culture was slowly, painfully, shifting. Susan Davis knocked and poked her head in. I'd promoted her to marketing director, a role she was born for. Ready for that budget review, Will? Yep, send in the team. I smiled. She was thriving, finally getting the recognition she deserved. These people, my old colleagues, now looked at me with a mixture of awe and respect. They knew I could have burned Connect Plus to the ground. Instead, I was helping rebuild it stronger. Laura met me for dinner that night. "So, Chief Compliance Officer," she said, a smile playing on her lips. Happy, I thought about it. The fire of retribution had cooled to embers. What remained was a sense of rightness. "I'm good, Laura. Really good." Outside, the city lights twinkled. My phone buzzed. A short message from David Green. New whistleblower protection policy draft approved unanimously by the Ethics Committee. Your input was invaluable. I slipped the phone back in my pocket. "It's funny," I said to Laura, taking her hand. "I used to think some bridges just burn and that's it. But sometimes, if a bridge is fundamentally sound, but just poorly maintained, or deliberately damaged, well, if you're willing to put in the work, to clear the rot and reinforce the foundations, it can be stronger than it ever was. We're building this one right this time. My work, my values, my place in the world all reshaped. All built on something solid. Justice wasn't just an end, it was a new beginning."